Yahweh Eloheinu cut a covenant with us at Horeb. Now, do you see this? This language is consistent in the Hebrew. It's consistent in every English edition of Scripture. That Deuteronomy, Devarim, chapter 5, verse 2 says, Yahweh Eloheinu cut a covenant with us at Horeb, not Sinai. Remember Paul's discussion in Galatians talking about what happened at Sinai. The covenant that was cut between Yahweh Eloheinu and Yashar'el was done at Mount Horeb. Yahweh cut not this covenant with our fathers, but with us, even us who are all of us here alive this day. Because Yahweh talked with you face to face in the mount out of the midst of the fire. You see, Yahweh talked to them face to face at Mount Horeb out of the midst of the fire. I stood between Yahweh and you at that time to show you at the word of Yahweh, for ye were afraid by reason of the fire and went not up to the mount, saying, I am Yahweh Eloheka, which brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim from the house of bondage. Okay, now here, he's going to restate for us this idea of the Devarim, right? And he says here, of course, we have this as what is understood to be the fourth commandment. Guard at the day of the Shabbat, to sanctify it as Yahweh Eloheka has commanded you. But the seventh day is the Shabbat of Yahweh Eloheka. In it you shall not do any work, you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your manservant, nor your maidservant, nor your ox, nor your ass, nor any of your cattle, nor your stranger that is within your gates, that your manservant and your maidservant may rest as well as you. And remember that you were a servant in the land of Mitzrayim, and that Yahweh Eloheka brought you out thence through a mighty hand and by a stretched out arm. Therefore, Yahweh Eloheka commanded you to observe at the day of the Shabbat. All right. Now we get to verse 17, right? Verse 17, you shall not kill. Now we know that the taking of the life of anything that has blood, because the soul of the flesh is in the blood. If it has blood, then you're not supposed to kill it unless you are specifically authorized to kill it. All right. Let's take a look at slide 2. All right. So the question before us today, and I think it's a big question, is, are those who keep the feast of Vayikra, Leviticus 23, required also to keep the animal sacrifices? There are those who argue that keeping the Levitical feast requires a person also to keep the animal sacrifices as they were supposedly required. Is this true? All right, slide 3. Let's look at the following words. We're going to look at some Hebrew words here. Now, this is going to get kind of technical, but we have to get technical to try to understand this. So we're going to look at some of these terms that are being used for sacrifice and offering. I mean, Zebach, Olah, Korban, Isha. There are a couple of others, but those are the words that are primarily front and center as to what we're going to deal with. Okay. So in slide 4, we start talking about the word Zebach. Now, Zebach, which is, H2077, it comes from the root word Zabak 2076, okay? Now, you get Strong's telling us, well, this means the slaughter, the flesh of an animal, by implication of sacrifice, okay? But then we get to the colon, we see what the meaning of the word is, an offering. And when we look at Zabak, the primitive root, they say, well, it means to slaughter an animal. But when you get past the colon, it means what? To offer. So Zebach, Zabak, when ignored, the Nikud, the Masoretic vowel sounds are spelled exactly the same. If you look at it, you see Zion, Beit, Chet in both cases. Somebody has to distinguish it by giving you Nikud vowel sounds to make one Zebach and the other Zabak. Either way, you're talking about an offering. Okay. So let's look at an example of this word Zebach here in slide 5. This is from Bereshith, Genesis, chapter 31, verse 54. Then Yaakov offered sacrifice, an offering upon the mount, and called his brethren to eat bread, and they did eat bread and tarried all the night in the mount. Now, what you see here is, you see Yaakov offered a sacrifice and an offering, right? And this is called a Zebach. Now, when you read this, if you use just a straightforward understanding, that he offered a burnt offering. He offered a burnt offering. He obviously did an animal sacrifice. Well, that's not necessarily true because zabach just means offering. It can mean just simple offering. He offered a sacrifice, an offering upon the mount. Then what did he do? Did he call his brothers to eat the sacrifice? Did they call him, well, let's eat this ram, let's eat this bull, let's whatever it is we sacrifice? Did he call them to do that? No. He called them to eat bread, to eat bread. So the implication is that this first place we see Zebach is talking about, I believe, a grain offering, not an animal offering, but a grain offering, right? What's the exegesis of this passage? Yaakov offered an offering. In both cases, the word there is zebach, and then they ate bread. Is it logical to conclude that it was an animal sacrifice? The remainder of the verse doesn't justify it. Okay, slide 6. There's a second witness to this same concept where we're going to see zebach and the word olah offered. Okay, and olah is another one of our words here that we're going to be talking about. This comes from Shemot, chapter 18. Verse 12, and Yithro, Moshe's father-in-law, took a burnt offering, which is olah, and sacrifices, which is zebach, for Elohim. And Aharon came and all the elders of Yashar'el to eat bread with Moshe's father-in-law before Elohim. Okay, now, we talk about olah. We're going to get into olah here in a little bit. But olah is translated in all the English editions as burnt offering. But better said, rising smoke. Now, let's just take a look at this for a minute and see what this mindset is at the time that they're doing these offerings, right? They believed at the time that Yahuah Eloheka was right there in the clouds, right? Just above them, that heavens were right there, maybe 5,000 feet, 10,000 feet. And if they wanted to worship him, they wanted to send up a smoke signal to him from the earth. They're saying, here, we're thinking about you. So here's a smoke signal that's going to rise up to you. So they had what was called a rising smoke or an olah. Now we're going to look at this word more in depth. But really what's talking about there is not necessarily the animal that's on the fire, but rather the smoke that is rising to heaven, okay? The smoke that's rising to heaven, the olah. And when you're talking about sacrifices, you're not talking about sacrifices, you're talking about zabach, which is offerings. So, and Yithro, Moshe's father-in-law, took a rising smoke and offerings for Elohim. Okay, you see, now right now we don't have any animals in this mix. And then what do we find? Aharon came and all the elders of Yashar'el to eat the flesh of the bull, it says, to eat the flesh of the ram, to eat the flesh of the lamb. No, it doesn't say that. It says Aharon came and all the elders of Yashar'el to eat bread, to eat bread. Again, the implication is grain offering, not animal sacrifice. Okay, let's look at slide 7, okay? We have another passage here that's going to prove to be very interesting. This is Shemot, Exodus, chapter 23, verse 18. So we look at this word zabach, and we find the most important prophecy buried among the Masoretic language of the animal sacrifice. Now, again, if you're a person who believes in animal sacrifice and you're reading these words, your bias may come out in how you construe these words. But I'm going to show you what's here, and I think it's going to be surprising. So we see in Shemot, Exodus 23:18, you shall not offer the blood of my sacrifice with chametz, that's leaven. Neither shall the fat of my sacrifice remain until the morning. Okay, so you're reading this and you're thinking, okay, well, look, don't offer the blood of my sacrifice with chametz. So this means that Yah himself is demanding a blood sacrifice of an animal, and don't keep the fat of my sacrifice. Don't let that remain until the morning. Make sure you take care of that fat. Eat the fat, do whatever it is that is desired here under this understanding of the scripture. However, let's go to slide 8 and let's take a close look at what the Hebrew says. Lo ha-zebach al chametz dam zabak ulo yilin chelev chagi ad boker. We see here the context is the blood of Yah's sacrifice, which shall not be offered with leaven, and then includes the fat offering. Is this right? Well, let's go to slide 9. What actually appears here is actually a messianic prophecy. Lo hazebach, no chametz. None of the chametz, right? Al chametz shall be upon my offering, right? Lo hazebach, no, none of the offering upon it shall have chametz, leaven, the blood, right? And my offering of blood. Lo hazebach al chametz dam zabachi. No hametz shall be upon my offering of blood. You see, now this is different than saying upon my sacrifice, right? No hametz shall be upon my offering of blood, and no fat of my feast shall remain until morning. What's he talking about? Well, what you're talking about, this is a prophecy concerning the offering of Mashiach's blood, which is going to be on that feast where there is no chametz, no leaven. In other words, this is predicting that when the offering of Mashiach's blood is made, there will not be any leaven. First of all, the leaven means no sin, right? The spiritual implication is there's no sin in the blood offering of Mashiach. No sin. There's no sin there. And furthermore, it predicts the time when the blood offering is going to be made. No chametz means this offering is going to be done during that feast called unleavened bread that is generally referred to as the Pesach, which means the whole week, right? The Passover preparation day, all of matzah, and the Bikur feast. All of those, all combined, are often called the Pesach. They're known as one of those feasts where all the males are supposed to come up to Jerusalem 3 times a year, one for the Pesach, one for Shavuot, one for Sukkot. And Sukkot and the Pesach feast are 8 days, usually. And so you see here that no chametz shall be upon my offering blood. There shall be no sin on my offering of blood. There should be no leaven, because that offering will take place on the Feast of Unleavened Bread, on matzah. And no fat of my feast shall remain till the morning. Now, the fat is usually excluded from the offering. The fat is pulled out, right? And the organs are pulled out. So what about the fat? What is he talking about the fat? He's talking about no unacceptable things shall remain until the morning. And so what happened? What happened to Mashiach that night, right? They all fell asleep. And when he was arrested, all of them fled. All of them fled. Only Kephah followed him to where he was being taken. And when Kephah got there, he proceeded to deny him 3 times. You see, by the time the cock crowed, by the time the morning arrived, right, there was no fat of the feast remaining. So this is a messianic prophecy that appears in this passage in Shemot, 23:18.